that exists. So there's a focal donor. The person has a year they're incoming, 2 years they're there, and then a year they're outgoing. The UN has a permanent seat, which right now is filled by UNFPA. And those people are our primary interlocutors with government in terms of our meetings, which then brings us to communication. We meet. We're in meetings all the time. The CCS is a meeting with the Minister of Health and all health partners. It happens twice a year. Once to talk about the plan for next year, for all of us to agree it's a good plan, priorities are right, you're going in the right direction. The second is to assess performance on the past year. So to say, how did things go last year? Do we agree it was more or less okay? As you can imagine, when you get together, all the heads of cooperation and the Minister of Health, that dialogue is only so frank. It's only so, things get bumped up to be, there's a politesse that influences how we speak to each other. So those meetings are important, but there's still political dialogue. The CCC is a monthly meeting that happens between the permanent secretary, so the most senior bureaucrat at the Ministry of Health, our focal donors, and then chairs of working groups. So, like myself, I'm the chair of the Public Financial Management Working Group, so we would meet once a month with the permanent secretary and the national directors to talk about sort of issues that we're trying to move along. The HPG is the swap group, which is then all partners, whoever, and then you have working groups. I was saying earlier that overall in Mozambique, there's more than 72 working groups. So there's a donor group, and then there'd be a donor meeting, and then a donor government meeting. There's only so many days, so much time. In health, we had 10 working groups. We've reduced them to 6, but those are the coordination ones. They don't count the technical working groups. We spend a lot of time meeting and talking about issues. And Mozambique is not a place where decisions are made in meetings. You might be able to talk about things, but the decisions are made in a different kind of form. So communication happens, but often it doesn't feel productive because you can leave these meetings still feeling like there's a question mark hanging over what is the priority, how are we going to handle this, where do we want to go. And then the SWAP plays a monitoring function for sector budget support, because the SWAP is different than the sector budget support mechanism. Everybody is in the SWAP, but 14 of us give very flexible money, and we have expectations that come with that. The PESH with 2 S's here is a 5-year strategic plan for the health sector, and the mechanism is tied to that. So they can spend on anything that's in that 5-year strategic plan, which is a full shopping list of everything. It's not very strategic in terms of making choices. The PESH with 1 S is their annual plan, which gets more down to an activity level. And we have meetings to talk about that, its credibility and where they're going. It's based on dialogue and annual review, which we undertake together with the Ministry of Health, looking at the plans, I already mentioned that, and then the reports, which are really just the same reports that they do every year for government procedures. This all looks very neat and tidy. It's very, very time-consuming, but also very difficult. It's a multicultural environment. If you think there are 25 donors, all of them come from different cultural orientations, how we speak to each other, how we understand terminology, how we understand development, what our own political pressures are, is very difficult to negotiate. And in times I would say we don't do it very well, in others we do it better. And then throw us all into Mozambique, which has its own history. As was spoken about this morning, do we see where we are? Do we understand the history and the culture of how we understand the role of government, the role of the state, the role of foreigners, I would say, because I think that that is both colonial and also aid-driven. That history is very complex and influences our work. And then also we throw in things like the Global Fund, which isn't, sort of here on the list is one big thing, but it probably takes up 20% of our time, at least, sometimes half of our time, talking about the Global Fund, how to help Mozambique get these resources. and how to make it make sense. Because right now there's 2 million bed nets in a warehouse in central Mozambique that were bought with Global Fund resources, but there was no money to distribute them anywhere. So quick, does anyone have some money so that we could get the bed nets out and actually get them used? It's extremely complex and gets us into the details. We have a mechanism that is supposed to keep us at a macro level and say, you're going in the right direction, go. But somehow we still get trapped in spending a lot of time on the details. Lastly, lessons learned, and I'm not sure they're the right ones, as I'm reflecting this morning. The sector is very vulnerable, and financing is very vulnerable. Mozambique needs a health financing strategy, and we're working on one. We're coming to that. I think the other thing, donor coordination, dedicated time. So not just having people in country who are busy spending all of their time on their own corporate issues, but who are actually able to dedicate attention to what's happening in the country is important. A willingness to work together, which I would say the U.S. government in Mozambique has right now. I'm not sure that's always the case, but it's something that's making a difference. And good communication are essential. Not that we have all of those, but I think that's what we need to work towards. And ultimately, I think we do work better when we work together. It's just figuring out how to work together better. That's the real issue.